Hi, welcome to Bedtime Stories with OPL. I'm Miss Beth. Grab your favorite stuffy, get comfy, and let's get ready for a story.
Hey, Max. What are you doing? What you looking for? What you looking for? You looking for your ball of yarn? Bark. Here you go. Here you go. That's your new favorite toy? You know, that reminds me of a story. Are you ready for a bedtime story? Oh, you good? Yeah, you ready for a story now? Bark, bark. All right. Let's see. Here we go. The 6 Swans. Sound cool? Bark. All right. Once upon a time, a king was hunting and became lost. He looked left and right and around and around, but he didn't know where he was at all. He was frightened. Bark, 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 bark. Oh, that means he was afraid. Bark. Yeah. Bark, bark. Then out of nowhere, he saw an old woman walking up to him. It was a witch. "Can you show me the way out of the wood?" asked the king. "Oh, yes, your majesty," answered she. "Certainly I can, but you must make me a promise. If you do not, you will never get out of the wood again." "What is it?" asked the king. "I have a daughter," said the old woman, "who is very beautiful, and if you will marry her and make her queen, I will show you the way out of the wood." The king promised because he didn't know how he would get home without help. The old woman led him into her little house, and there her daughter was sitting by the fire. It seemed as if the girl had been expecting him, and though he saw that she was very beautiful, he did not like her, and he could not look at her without an inward shudder. Nevertheless, he had promised. So the old woman showed him the way as they went back to his castle where the wedding was held. The king had been married before, and his first wife had died, leaving 7 children, 6 boys and 1 girl. Is that a lot of children?
Bark!
Yeah. You like playing with kids, don't you?
Bark, 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 bark.
Yeah, there's not any here right now to throw your ball for you or anything. Maybe we can play tomorrow though.
Bark, 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 bark.
All right. Let's see, where was I? Aha! He loved them more than anything in the world. The king was afraid of their stepmother. He was afraid that she might mistreat them. So he took them to a lonely castle standing in the middle of a wood. There they remained hidden, for the road to it was so hard to find that the king himself could not have found it if it had not been for a ball of yarn. Here it is. A wise woman had given it to him. When he threw it on the ground, it unrolled itself and showed him the way.
Bark!
What did it show you the way to?
Bark, bark.
The kitchen?
Bark.
That would be a pretty good ball of yarn. You ready to go on with the story?
Bark, bark.
Yeah? Alright. The king went so often to see his dear children that the queen became curious and wanted to know why he went out into the wood alone. She bribed his servants with money, and they showed her the secret and told her of the ball of yarn. She found out where the king kept the yarn, and then she made some little white silk shirts and sewed a curse in each.
Bark.
It's not very nice, is it?
Bark, bark.
No. Once the king had ridden to hunt, she took the little shirts and went into the wood, and the ball of yarn showed her the way. The children, seeing someone in the distance, thought it was their dear father coming to see them, and ran jumping for joy to meet him. Then the wicked queen threw the little shirts over each child's head, And as soon as the shirts touched their bodies, they were changed into swans. Yeah. And they flew away into the wood.
Bark.
Yeah, that's sad.
Bark, bark.
Let's see what's going to happen.
Bark, bark.
The queen went home very pleased to think she had gotten rid of her new stepchildren. But the princess had not run out with her brothers, and so the queen knew nothing about her. The next day the king went to see his children, but he found nobody but his daughter. "Where are your brothers?" asked the king. "Father," she answered, "they went away and left me behind." And then she told him how she had seen from her window her brothers fly away through the wood as swans, and she showed him the feathers which they had let fall in the courtyard. The king was saddened, but he never dreamed it was the queen who had done this wicked deed. I know, right? He was afraid the princess would also be stolen from him, and he wished to take her away with him. She was afraid of the queen, and begged the king to let her stay one more night in the castle in the wood. She, however, had other plans. "I have to go find my brothers," she said to herself. Is she gonna find them?
Bark, bark.
Yeah. And when night came, she went straight into the wood. She walked on all that night and the next day until she could walk no longer. At last she saw a tiny hut, and she went in and found a room with 6 little beds in it. She crept under one of the beds and lay down on the hard floor and wished for night. When it was near sunset, she heard a rustling sound and saw 6 swans come flying in at the window.
Bark, bark.
They landed on the ground, and all at once their feathers disappeared, and they were themselves again. The princess was very glad and crept from under the bed. The brothers were glad when their sister appeared, but their joy did not last long. "You must not stay here," they said to her. "We can only get rid of our swan skins and keep our human shape every evening for a quarter of an hour."
Bark, 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 bark.
Oh, a quarter of an hour is 15 minutes. That's not very long, is
Bark,
it?
bark.
Yeah,
Bark,
yeah,
bark.
yeah. It's okay. Let's see what happens next.
Bark, bark.
After that, they must be changed again into swans. Their sister wept at hearing this and said, "Can nothing be done to set you free?" "No," they answered. "The work would be too hard for you. For 6 whole years you would be required never to speak or laugh, and you would make during that time 6 little shirts out of daisies. If you were to speak a single word before the work was ended, we will stay swans forever."
Bark.
I know, that's so sad. Do you want your volley on?
Bark.
Oh, here you go. You wanna hear what happened?
Bark, 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 bark.
Okay. Just as the brothers had finished telling her this, the quarter of an hour came to an end, and they changed into swans and flew out of the window. The princess made up her mind to set her brothers free. She left the hut, and going into the middle of the wood, she climbed a tree and slept there that night. The next morning she set to work and gathered daisies and began sewing them together. As for speaking, there was no one to speak to, and as for laughing, there was nothing to laugh at. So she sat on and looked at nothing but her work. She had been going on like this for a few years, when it happened that the prince of that country went hunting in the wood. He saw her in the tree and called out to her, saying, "Who are you?" But she gave no answer. "Come down," he cried, "I'll do you no harm." But she only shook her head. The prince climbed up the tree and gently brought down the princess, whose clothes were quite ragged by this time. The prince asked, "Who are you? What are you doing in the tree?" But still she said nothing. He spoke to her in all the languages he knew, but she remained speechless. As she was so lonely, he felt a great pity rise up in his heart towards her. He put his cloak around her shoulders, put her before him on his horse, and brought her to his castle. Then he caused rich clothing to be put upon her, and her beauty shone as bright as the morning. But no word would she utter. He seated her by his side at his table every night for several weeks. Her shyness, kindness, and gentleness so pleased him that he asked her to marry him. She simply smiled and nodded, and after a few days they were married. But the prince had a wicked mother who was displeased with the marriage. This poor princess. Who knows where she came from, said she, and not able to speak a word? She's not worthy of my son. After a year had passed, the princess brought her first child into the world. The old queen decided to play a trick and get rid of the princess. Yeah. She carried the baby away and hid it. I know, it's so sad. Then she went to the prince and said the princess had left the baby in the woods. I know. Yeah. The prince would not believe the queen. His quiet, gentle wife could never do such a thing. The princess went on quietly sewing the shirts for her brothers. The next time that a fine boy was born, the wicked queen hid that baby and told the same lie. But the prince did not believe her, for he said she is too tender and good to do any such thing. And if she could speak and could defend herself, then her innocence would be as clear as day. When for the third time the queen stole away the newborn child and accused the princess, who was unable to say a word in her defense, the prince could do nothing and she was sent to the dungeon. Yes. The day on which she was sentenced to the dungeon was the very last day of the 6th year in which she had neither spoken or laughed, to free her dear brothers from the evil spell. The 6 shirts were ready, all except one which did not have a left sleeve. When she was led to the dungeon, she carried the 6 shirts on her arm, and when she mounted the steps, all at once she cried out, for there were 6 swans coming flying through the air. The swans flew around her, so that she could throw the shirts over them. When that had been done, their swan skins fell off, and her brothers stood before her in their own bodies, quite safe and sound. But as one shirt did not have the left sleeve, the youngest brother had a swan's wing instead of a left arm. They hugged and kissed each other and wept for joy. The princess went up to the prince, who looked on in amazement. "Dearest husband, now I can tell you that I'm innocent and have been falsely accused." And she told him what the evil queen had done. The princess was reunited to the prince with great joy, and the wicked queen was banished from the kingdom. It's pretty funny, isn't it?
Bark, bark, bark.
The princess lived many years in peace and joy with her 6 brothers, her 3 children who were brought back to her, and her loving husband.
Bark, bark.
And they all lived happily ever after.
Bark, bark.
Was that a good story?
Bark, bark.
I like that one too. Are you ready for bed?
Bark.
All right, I'll cover you up. There you go.
I hope you enjoyed our story tonight. We have these great stories and lots more like them at the library. Come find out where your imagination can take you. I'll see you next time. Sweet dreams!